Celestial Spirit Doll, The Ghost King's Trap. Let the story begin. Beyond the physical world we live in exists a spiritual world that runs parallel to it. However, that world is highly illusory and mysterious. Because of this, our understanding of it remains very limited and vague. Normally, because these two worlds are separated by space and time, they rarely interact with one another. That said, rare does not mean never. In real life, there have been many times when we have encountered or heard of strange happenings here and there that cannot be explained by ordinary logic. These strange occurrences could be vague, flickering phantoms, inexplicable coincidental deaths, or the tales of psychic mediums locating graves. Then there are the spirit mediums who become possessed, accurately stating the names, backgrounds, and family circumstances of their clients, and so on. There are far too many to count. It is a bit better nowadays, but in ancient times, stories of ghosts and demons at the banyan trees, bamboo bushes, or village wells were intertwined with everyone's childhood. Among these, the world of black magic is perhaps the least encountered and the most feared. In people's minds, the image of sorcerers and shamans has always been incredibly terrifying. They are figures with grotesque, inhuman appearances, hiding in deep mountains, secluded valleys, poisonous forests, or remote, desolate tribes where few people live. They practice incredibly creepy and horrifying dark and ghostly arts. Because people can never guess what they are doing, what they will do, or what they are capable of, a psychology of caution, defensiveness, and taboo naturally arises in the depths of everyone's minds. In that mysterious world of dark magic and talismans, perhaps the most familiar thing, even to an uneducated ordinary person, is the Tian Lin Kai, Celestial Spirit Doll. Just hearing the name is enough to make people imagine its cruelty and horror. Every now and then in real life, one might hear of someone somewhere practicing the Tian Lin Kai. Whenever that happens, it becomes a hot topic for everyone to discuss. Some people who know a little bit will start flapping their lips, making the listeners widen their eyes and gape in both fear and awe. That is in everyday life. But in the circle of sorcerers who practice talismans, when Tian Lin Kai is mentioned, they immediately form two opposing states of mind, both craving and fearing. They crave it because, according to ancient secret records, if anyone can master the Tian Lin Kai, they can summon wind and rain, command ghosts and gods, and understand all things to turn bad luck into good. However, that is only what is recorded and rumored. In reality, no one has ever witnessed it with their own eyes, or perhaps someone has achieved it but it wasn't widely spread to the outside world. Yet, since one is a practitioner of magic, who wouldn't desire and be able to refuse the heaven-piercing powers that the Tian Lin Kai brings? That being said, nothing in this world is easy. To practice the Tian Lin Kai, one must pay a very heavy price, even at the cost of one's own life. In a desolate graveyard located on the edge of a forest, the light of an oil lamp was flickering in the pitch-black night. In the distance, the occasional call of a night owl echoed. On a small wooden table painted blood red sat a bowl of white rice and a boiled egg. 3 incense sticks planted there were billowing thick smoke, creating a gloomy, ghostly atmosphere. Next to the bowl of white rice lay an ancient book that had been open since who knows when. Mixed with the distant sound of the forest owl was the hoarse, chanting voice of a man in his 60s. Under the light of the oil lamp, a pair of piercing eyes shone. His hair was tied up in a messy bun on top of his head like a bird's nest. The man's face was gaunt and greenish, with the bones of his chin and eye sockets clearly protruding, making him look extremely fierce. The surroundings were completely silent, but as the man's chanting voice rang out, gentle breezes from all 4 sides gradually began to rise. The breezes brought a bone-chilling cold dew, making the man shiver slightly. Suddenly, the corners of his mouth curled into a smile, and he whispered, "They're here, very good, come in greater numbers. Caw caw caw. As the hoarse voice fell on the graves around him, flickering green lights began to appear. At first, there were only a few small dots, but they gradually multiplied until they formed a large cluster. After floating around for a while, the glowing dots slowly advanced toward the table where the man was sitting. Seeing this, the man's face showed even more joy and delight. He whispered again, as if talking to the glowing dots, come here, and eat. Caw caw. A moment later, as if understanding his words, the dots swarmed around the bowl of white rice. After a while, from the deep forest, small glowing dots also shot out and rushed toward them. But when these new dots rushed over, the man snorted heavily, raised his hand to form a seal, and chanted a spell. Suddenly, the incoming dots, as if terrified of something, darted away, burrowing deep into the forest and disappearing. Seeing this, the man laughed and muttered in his hoarse voice, "Get out of here right now, don't you dare come near here." And so, the man stood still, watching the dots swarm around the bowl of white rice. After a while, they gradually dispersed and vanished behind the earthen graves in the distance. Seeing this, the man nodded in satisfaction, then packed up his tools and slowly walked back toward the village. By the time his figure carrying the oil lamp had completely vanished, the place was once again enveloped in a pitch-black, deathly silence. At dawn, the first crow of a rooster signaled the start of a new day in Ban Luang village. The first rays of sunlight began to peek over the horizon, dissipating the dew clinging to the leaves of a spacious stilt house with a yin-yang red-tiled roof. The surrounding walls were tightly enclosed by neatly stacked stones. A man wearing a white traditional tunic was sitting inside. He held a tobacco pipe in his hand, puffing away, his eyes closed as if savoring the buzz of the smoke. A while later, a woman's voice called out from outside the gate. "Shaman Tuong! Shaman Tuong!" Lost in the buzz of his smoke, the sudden call made the man frown slightly. He slowly walked toward the door and shouted loudly, "Who is it, making such a ruckus early in the morning? I'll let the dogs loose to bite your mother, ruining my mood completely." Outside the gate at this moment was a woman around 50 years old, with a weathered face, wearing a tattered black and red traditional outfit. Seeing Shaman Tuong's irritable attitude, the woman looked frightened and spoke in a trembling, breathless voice. "Please help my child, Shaman. Last night he had a high fever, and now his body is just growing limp. He hasn't woken up." Shaman Tuong smacked his lips, lifted the pipe, and took another puff. A long time later, he said in an arrogant tone, "Go on back. After I finish my breakfast, I'll go over there." Hearing this, the woman was overjoyed and quickly turned to rush back home. After she had completely disappeared from view, the man called out loudly toward the kitchen. "Swang! Where are you? Have you prepared my breakfast yet?" A woman's voice echoed from below. "I'm here, I'm bringing it up to you right now, Shaman Tuong." A moment later, a skinny, plain-looking woman ran up from the kitchen, carrying a tray with a plate of smoked buffalo meat and a large bowl of white rice. After carefully placing it on the table, she turned to Shaman Tuong and softly said, "Please enjoy your breakfast, Shaman." Looking at her attitude, no one would think she was actually his wife, they would think she was just a servant. But in this Ban Luang village, women were no different from slaves in the house. They worked hard day and night, caring for their husbands and children, but were never respected. They weren't even allowed to participate in important matters inside or outside the home. This custom had been maintained for hundreds of years. Over time, it seeped deeply into the subconscious and lifestyle of the people here. So, they thought it was completely normal. Not once did they dare to think of standing up to fight or demand their rights. They just accepted living in resignation, in humiliation, and in the disdain of their own husbands and children for the rest of their lives. Once a daughter was married off, she was no longer considered their child. Even if she was beaten, abused, or even killed by her husband's family, they were not allowed to say anything. Furthermore, Shaman Tuong was a man of great prestige in this village. All major tasks, important events, rituals, and healing had to be presided over by him. Because of this, he grew increasingly domineering. Not only his wife but even the village elders were ignored by him. Although everyone knew this, no one dared to show any disrespect to him because his importance and influence in Ban Luang was simply too great. After finishing his breakfast, Shaman Tuong walked into the back room of the house. A moment later, he came out, having changed into a green ritual robe, wearing a folded cloth hat on his head, and carrying a black wooden box. This was his standard outfit and tool set whenever he went out to practice medicine. His house was situated on a high hill, surrounded by dense trees, completely isolated from the other houses in Ban Luang. Therefore, whenever he wanted to go into the village, he had to cross a rather long and desolate dirt path. After arriving at the house of Mother Lean, who had called him that morning, he slowly stepped inside. The small house was made of rotting lucia wood. Inside, there was nothing but a rickety bed with a few torn clothes hanging on a bamboo pole stretched across the porch. On the bed, a woman looked worried as she stared down at her son. Seeing the shaman arrive, the woman hurried over, pleading, "Please save my family, shaman. If you don't, my child will die." As she spoke, she knelt on the ground, her voice pitiful. Seeing this, Shaman Tuong didn't even spare her a glance but walked straight to the bed. After observing for a moment, he said, "He's been possessed by a forest ghost. It's very critical. If we don't cast a spell quickly, it will be hard to save his life." Hearing this, the mother's face turned deathly pale. She kowtowed to him even more and cried, "I beg you, I'll be a cow or a horse, I'll endure anything, just please save him." Seeing this, the shaman clicked his tongue and said in a condescending tone, "All right, stop crying and begging. Besides, I'm already here, I can't just watch him die." But he hesitated for a moment, then cast a sinister look at Mother Lean and continued, "Today, my fee will be double the usual. Your house must pay me a pair of roosters and 2 pigs. If you agree, I'll make a move to help. If not, just wait to collect your son's corpse." Ka ka ka. Hearing Shaman Tuong's words, the woman cried again, pleading, "Shaman, you can see our situation. Besides a few corn cobs we just harvested, there's nothing left. By this morning, the pantry was empty. Please make a move to save him, and we'll owe you the rest. I promise to pay you in full." When Mother Lean finished speaking, a flash of anger appeared on the shaman's face. He kicked her hard in the face, sending her sprawling to the ground, and yelled, "Promise to pay in full? Remember the last time your husband died? You called me over to perform the ritual and promised me 2 pigs. To this day, you've only paid 1, and now you want to borrow again? Are you planning to cheat me again? I'm warning you, if you don't figure out a way to pay the rest, I'll report you to the village elders and have them drive you and your son out of here." The kick was so hard that the corner of Mother Lean's mouth bled, and her head spun, but she endured the pain, scrambled up, grabbed the shaman's foot, and continued to beg. "I'll be a cow or a horse for you, shaman. He's all I have left. If he dies, I won't be able to live either. Whatever my house can offer, just take it. I only beg you to have mercy on us and save him." He kicked her again and said in a sentencing tone, "Fine, I'll put it this way. How many fields do you have left? From now on, they belong to me. You can continue farming them as hired labor for my house. You keep working until both the old and new debts, plus interest, are paid off. Furthermore, you must sign a blood agreement as proof. If you dare try to default again, don't blame me." Hearing this, Mother Lean was stunned for a moment. Those few fields were what her husband had left behind after he died. They were her source of life, her only rice bowl. If she agreed, she and her son would become unpaid slaves for the shaman. Their lives and fates would be entirely in his hands. But thinking of her son's critical condition, she gritted her teeth and said, "Yes, I agree." The shaman smirked, took a pre-written piece of paper from his wooden box, and brought out a box of ink, telling Mother Lean to press her fingerprint on it. She looked at the paper, hesitating, wanting to ask what it said, but seeing his stare, she was too afraid to ask, fearing it would anger him and change his mind. So she quickly dipped her 2 thumbs in the ink and pressed them onto the paper. After she finished, the shaman picked up the paper, examined it carefully, smiled sinisterly, and tucked it carefully into his box. Then he turned to Mother Lean and said loudly, "Now go get me a bowl of water." Understanding that the shaman was preparing to cast a spell to heal her son, she wiped her tears and hurried to the clay jar of spring water behind the house. She returned carrying a full bowl. The shaman then took a handful of sticky rice from his box and sprinkled it around the 4 legs of the bed where her son lay. Next, he lit an incense stick and ran around the house, muttering incantations under his breath. Finally, he stuck the incense at the head of the bed. Then, he took a plate and 3 ancient copper coins from his box to divine a hexagram. After finishing the divination, he nodded and turned to Mother Lean, smiling. "The ancestors bless your house. Your son can still be saved, his time isn't up yet." Though she didn't understand, hearing him say that made Mother Lean weep with joy and stammer, "Yes, yes. I leave everything to you, shaman. I am endlessly grateful." The shaman took a bamboo tube from his box, opened the lid, and poured a bright red liquid into the bowl of water she had brought. The liquid gave off a fishy, nauseating smell that made Mother Lean shiver. Next, he took out a yellow talisman folded into a triangle. Mother Lean watched his every move closely. Once the talisman was out, he licked it, closed his eyes, held it up, and began forming seals with his other hand while chanting. Mother Lean could hear him but couldn't make out the words. She just assumed he was casting a spell to exorcise the ghost. After chanting for a while, he set the talisman on fire and dropped the ashes into the bowl of water. Then he turned to Mother Lean and said, "Now, give your son some of this water to drink, and rub the rest on his face and hair. That will drive the forest ghost away." Mother Lean, both hopeful and nervous, hurriedly brought the bowl to the bed. She helped her son up and made him drink. Afterward, she rubbed the rest on his face, nose, and hair as instructed. Soon, his face and hair were covered in the bright red liquid, looking incredibly ghastly. Mother Lean waited anxiously for a result. Sure enough, a moment later, her son opened his eyes and sat up. He clutched his stomach and vomited a puddle of bright red blood onto the floor. Shortly after, sweat poured off him like a bath, soaking the torn blanket. Seeing this, Mother Lean looked worried and turned to the shaman. "Is he okay, shaman? Why is he vomiting so much blood?" The shaman sat far away, looking calm as he said, "Don't worry. The forest ghost has been driven out. He lost a lot of vitality, so he feels hungry and tired. He'll be fine once he sleeps it off." Sure enough, about half an hour later, her son sat up. He said he was hungry. Overjoyed, Mother Lean ran to the kitchen to get him a boiled sweet potato. He grabbed it and gnawed on it ravenously, as if he had been starved for days. A moment later, he asked for more. She happily ran down to get another one. After eating the second one, he rolled over and fell into a deep sleep. Seeing him asleep, she looked at the shaman and whispered, "Is he okay now, shaman?" His behavior was so strange. The shaman glared at her and said loudly, "Rest assured." He was possessed by a forest ghost that drained his life force, weakening his body and mind. Now that the ghost is out, he's hungry and exhausted. Let him sleep long, and he'll be fine when he wakes up. Hearing this, she was relieved and thanked him profusely. Seeing this, he said, "No need to thank me. Just remember what you promised me. I'm going home now." Without waiting for her reply, he grabbed his wooden box and left straight away, leaving Mother Lean behind, feeling both relieved and worried, wondering where her life and her son's would go from here. It must be said that although Shaman Tuong was greedy and cruel, his magical skills were truly top tier. Any patient in the village that he agreed to treat was 9 times out of 10 saved. No one dared to offend him because every family eventually fell ill. If you accidentally angered him, you were just bringing disaster upon yourself and waiting to die. Over time, he became no different from a king in this remote Ban Luang village. But there was one strange thing: whenever he healed someone, he prioritized being paid in cattle, pigs, or chickens. Only if the family didn't have them would he accept money or grain as a substitute. The villagers always wondered about this. Yet, no one dared to ask him directly. Clearly, his household only had 2 people, they couldn't possibly eat that much. Why did he need so many cattle, pigs, and chickens? To this day, it remained an unsolvable mystery. They also noticed that when they went to his house, they never saw these animals. They didn't know if he slaughtered them or sold them somewhere else. His movements were also highly secretive. Apart from healing or conducting major rituals in the village, no one knew what he did or where he went the rest of the time. Partly because his house was completely isolated from the rest of the village, and partly because he rarely interacted or spoke with the villagers. More importantly, he was an outsider, so he had no relatives here. Because of this, no one knew his true origins. They only knew he had settled and lived in this remote village for nearly 20 years. Before him, the village had another shaman. But ever since Shaman Tuong arrived, that shaman mysteriously vanished. No one knew where he went, or if he was alive or dead. He just disappeared overnight without a trace, as if he had evaporated. The disappearance was so sudden and mysterious that the villagers were terrified. Some elders even suspected Shaman Tuong was involved, but without solid evidence, no one dared say it aloud, they just kept it in their hearts. However, as Shaman Tuong's prestige grew over time, those doubts faded, and eventually, no one remembered the missing man anymore. Inside the house, aside from his wife, no one knew of his secret movements. And even she only knew that every night he would take his wooden box, containing a bowl of white rice and a boiled egg, and go outside. After living together for so many years, she still didn't know what he did out there in the middle of the night. She asked a few times, but he would just glare and snap, "This is my business. Don't ask so much, and don't gossip outside, or don't blame me for what happens." After a few times, she never dared to ask again. In fact, right inside their own house, there were places she was forbidden to go near. That was a secret room behind the house. Every time he went out, he locked it tightly. When he was inside, he bolted it from the inside, so she had never once stepped foot in there. The villagers didn't even know the room existed. Once, when he went inside, she curiously peeked, but he caught her. His face was as fierce as an evil spirit. He beat her until her face was bruised and bloody, then locked her up without food or water for days. From then on, she never dared go near that room, even in her thoughts. That night, Shaman Tuong went out as usual. The moon was bright and clear, illuminating the path like day, so he walked without needing an oil lamp. On the narrow, thorny dirt path leading deep into the forest, he walked carefully. Normally, villagers rarely went into the deep forest at night, partly out of fear of tigers, bears, and venomous insects like snakes and centipedes, and partly out of fear of vengeful spirits and ghosts lurking within. Only for an unavoidable reason would someone risk going alone into the deep forest at night. Such trips were usually a matter of life and death, incredibly dangerous. But for Shaman Tuong, it was different. He had been wandering the night alone for years. Ghosts and snakes that were terrifying to ordinary people posed no major threat to him. In fact, when they saw him, they would avoid him and run away with their tails between their legs. Today, he decided to go soul hunting deep in the forest, as the wandering souls nearby were no longer strong or useful enough for him. He walked on, crossing who knows how many dirt paths and streams, not knowing how far he had gone. By now, his legs were aching. He sat down, leaning against an ancient tree by the road to rest and regain his strength. He took a bamboo water bottle from his box and took a swig, then exhaled deeply, looking around. This unfamiliar dirt path had no human footprints. Occasionally, the ground showed large, sharp claw marks of forest animals that had passed by. If an ordinary person saw this, they would panic. But he just smirked, unbothered. The path ahead narrowed further, with tall grass growing thickly, completely covering it. This indicated that no one had been here for a very long time. After resting, he sighed, reached into his box, and pulled out a long-handled machete, then moved forward. His pace slowed as the flora became densely packed. With every step, he had to hack away at the poking thorns and branches. By now, the moonlight could no longer penetrate, as the thick canopy above blocked out the sky. He was surrounded by pitch-black darkness, accompanied by the rustling of leaves. As he brushed against branches, the calls of night birds and foraging wolves occasionally echoed, creating an incredibly eerie and ghostly atmosphere, much like the Yellow Springs. And so, a lone figure trudged through the silent night. He walked until nearly midnight, finally reaching the very end of the forest. Ahead, the path simply vanished. The ground beneath his feet was completely different from before. It was a reddish, muddy marsh. Strangely, though it was muddy, it was incredibly smooth and slick, without a single footprint or insect track left behind. Could it be that no living creature had ever been here? The space was deathly silent, so silent it was terrifying. He could hear his own heartbeat and breathing clearly. The incessant chirping of forest insects from before was now completely gone. It was as if he had stepped into an entirely different world. The sky here was ink black, not a single ray of moonlight could pierce through, as if the area had been draped in a black cloth. An ordinary person wouldn't be able to see a thing, not even their own hand in front of their face. But Shaman Tuong was different. His eyes were not normal. After decades of operating in the dark, he was used to it. More importantly, his eyes had been magically altered to see in the dark. They were no longer mortal eyes. They could not only see clearly in the dark but could also see spirits and ghosts. In other words, he possessed the legendary yin-yang eyes. He was still marveling at the strange surroundings when even stranger sights appeared. On all four sides were towering, colossal ancient trees, like pillars holding up the sky. Each tree was unimaginably massive. He guessed it would take 20 people holding hands to encircle one. In his entire life, he had never seen such enormous trees. Looking closer, he was even more astonished. The trunks of these ancient trees were bright blood red, smooth, and lacking the bark of normal trees. What terrified him even more was that there wasn't just one, but countless numbers of them. They looked exactly identical, growing so close together that there wasn't a single gap, even the wind couldn't squeeze through. He couldn't believe his own eyes. These trees didn't look naturally grown. They certainly weren't planted by humans either. Despite his vast knowledge of both the Yin and Yang realms, he had no idea what kind of tree this was. He had never seen or even heard of such a bizarre species. He looked up, the trunks shot straight up like arrows piercing the clouds. The bases were smooth as mirrors, without a single branch or leaf, but the tops were covered in thick, thorny canopies that intertwined tightly without a single gap. Every leaf was shaped like a serrated, sharp bronze saw blade. Just looking at them made one's skin crawl. Given their normal lifespan, these ancient trees were likely over 10,000 years old. At this moment, he stood there, shocked and frightened, not knowing what to do next. He didn't even know if he was dreaming, as this was the first time in his life witnessing something so bizarre and abnormal. Now, he couldn't move forward, as the trees completely blocked the way. On both sides far away were steep, slick cliffs, hanging precariously. Let alone humans, even animals would struggle to climb over them. One slip meant falling to one's death. The only way forward was to go straight through these trees. He had intentionally gone deep into the forest to find powerful spirits to enhance his magic, but he hadn't expected to encounter this. After thinking for a bit, he decided to cast a spell to boost his eyesight, to see if he could peer through the trees. But just as he raised his hand to form a seal, he suddenly heard laughter and chattering coming from behind the trees. The sound was faint, but he heard it clearly. It sounded like people talking, but they were using a language he couldn't understand. It resembled an ancient, primordial tongue. He was certain it wasn't a human language. He had studied all sorts of ancient texts and documents but had never encountered anything like it. The sudden noises in the deathly silent night made him jump, his heart skipping a beat. He never expected that besides himself, in this dangerous place, there would be so many strangers. This was the very end of the deep forest. If an ordinary person dared to enter here at night, it was certain death. Yet, on the other side, it seemed there wasn't just one person, but at least a few. And he couldn't even be sure if they were human. He quickly ran to a nearby tree to hide and continued eavesdropping. The laughter, chattering, and footsteps continued, growing louder, as if they were moving toward him. His heart pounded harder, and his breathing became heavy. As a shaman, seeing spirits was normal. He even specialized in capturing them to serve him. But ordinary spirits were just ghosts of dead humans or animals. They couldn't make physical noises that ordinary people could hear. Only shamans who controlled a part of their souls could hear and understand them. But the noises now were definitely not from ordinary spirits. Unless. Just thinking about it made him sweat like rain, his limbs trembling, too afraid to continue the thought. Inside his wooden box, the ancient red book, which was a treasure designed to absorb souls and trap the spirits he summoned, began to emit soft cries and whimpers. It had been passed down from his great-grandfather's time, for generations ago. Though over time, some souls had been swept into the cycle of reincarnation, the number of souls trapped inside was uncountable. Yet, right now, it was as if they sensed something terrifying outside, causing them immense fear. Clearly, whatever was outside posed a massive threat to them. This was also the first time Shaman Tuong had witnessed such a reaction from the book, making him deeply uneasy. A while later, the laughter suddenly stopped. The sudden silence made him flinch, thinking he had been discovered. Behind the tree, his face drained of blood. He held his breath, not daring to make a sound, his limbs shaking uncontrollably. He waited a long time, but nothing happened. Figuring they had left, he calmed down. He waited a bit longer until he was sure they were gone, then slowly poked his head out to look. But aside from the towering trees, he saw nothing. He finally exhaled in relief and rubbed his chest to slow his heartbeat. In all his life, he had never experienced such heart-pounding fear. The events felt like a dream, appearing and disappearing without a trace. Inside his box, the whimpers had quieted down. Because he shared a spiritual link with the trapped souls, he had felt their terror. Now, having fully calmed down, a bold idea popped into his head. He shifted from fear to curiosity. He wanted to explore what was behind the trees and who was talking. He knew the situation was incredibly dangerous, but he figured that behind the trees might be a great treasure, a feng shui vein, or a mysterious hidden realm. If he obtained it, his life and power would reach new heights. The more dangerous the place, the more precious and heavily guarded the secrets. Nothing in this world brings great benefit easily. Without risking one's life, one would never achieve greatness. Shaman Tuong understood this well. This time, it might even cost him his life, but he decided to take the gamble. But before risking it, he calculated every possible scenario to maximize his chances of survival. He took out all his talismans, cast a spell to summon all the spirits from the ancient book, and sealed them into the talismans. He prepared himself to cast spells and command them at a moment's notice. Next, he mentally mapped the route he had taken to ensure the fastest escape route if things went south. After checking everything twice and finding no issues, he felt reassured. If the thing behind the trees wasn't overwhelmingly powerful, his preparations were enough to save his life. Taking a deep breath to steady his mind, he raised his hand to his mouth and began chanting to order a soul from the book to scout behind the trees. At first, he ordered the soul of a black panther, but upon receiving the command, its entire body trembled violently and lay flat, refusing to move. He cast the spell again, but the result was the same. If he wasn't in the middle of an important task, he would have tortured the soul. He didn't know what was behind there that could make it disobey even under the threat of torture. Animal souls have very low intellect. When faced with a natural predator, even if beaten to death, they wouldn't dare attack back. A mouse, no matter how big, will fear a kitten. A python, though fierce, will flee from an eagle. Seeing this, he summoned other animal souls, but the result was the same. He was surprised. Was the thing behind the trees a natural predator to all of them? That was illogical and abnormal. His guard rose another notch. Left with no choice, he summoned a human soul. Human souls are much more rational than animals. Though also terrified, the fear of eternal torture made them wisely choose to take the risk. A female soul appeared, her messy hair covering her face, wearing a white dress stained with blood. God knows what torture she had endured before dying to look like that. Though her face was hidden, her limbs were trembling violently, proving her immense fear. Seeing her hesitating, he chanted another spell, causing her spectral body to warp in pain. She covered her head and shrieked in agony, her form beginning to fade. Only then did she look at him with pleading eyes. He stopped chanting and waited. A moment later, she slowly flew high into the air. The wind picked up, and the temperature dropped sharply, making even the shaman shiver. As the white blur flew up toward the treetops, he cast a spell to synchronize his consciousness with hers. Now, he saw what she saw and felt what she felt. He could clearly feel her extreme terror as she was about to see what lay beyond. The towering, thorny canopies interlocked without a single gap. No human, let alone a bird or beast, could climb through. Only souls could pass through. He didn't dare order her to go straight through the tree trunks, as that would surely alert the beings inside. He had her fly high to observe from above. The soul gradually weaved through the countless thorny branches. From the ground, she looked no bigger than a chopstick. She flew higher. Now, faint rays of moonlight began to flicker through the canopy ahead. Knowing she was nearing the top, both the shaman and the soul's anxiety peaked. What was behind there would soon be revealed. As the moonlight grew stronger, she was about to pass the final layer of leaves. Shaman Tuong held his breath, and the soul trembled violently. As she cleared the last branch, the bright moonlight illuminated the area. But just as she caught a glimpse of a sky as red as blood on the other side, something unexpected happened. She suddenly screamed in pain, as if striking an invisible barrier. A flash of red light exploded above her head, and instantly, she vanished into thin air, not a trace of her soul left behind. On the ground, Shaman Tuong instantly lost his connection to her. He stood there, gaping, frozen for several seconds in shock and astonishment. His mind raced, and finally, only one thought remained: I'm dead. I hit a barrier. My cover is blown. Without another thought, he turned and sprinted as fast as he could toward Ban Luong. He had only run a short distance when a massive roar erupted behind him, shaking the entire forest. Birds and beasts scattered in panic. Foraging wild animals collapsed to the ground, trembling in terror. Hearing the roar, Shaman Tuong's legs gave out, his heart felt like it was being squeezed, and he nearly collapsed. He quickly pulled out the talismans he had prepared. As he ran, he chanted and threw a talisman onto the path to block his pursuers. Behind him, the clanging of bells echoed relentlessly. The heavy footsteps and roars grew closer. But just as they were about to reach him, they were delayed by the talismans he left behind. Those were the spirits he had spent years collecting. Now, he threw them away without a sliver of hesitation. Survival was his only priority now. Occasionally, the sounds of animals shrieking in agony echoed from behind, as if they had encountered something utterly terrifying. However, the shrieks were brief before going silent. Because his consciousness was linked to these animal souls, he felt their terror as they faced the pursuers. But the fear was fleeting, and then he completely lost connection to them. He couldn't see clearly what was chasing him. He only knew there were many of them. Each was emaciated, looking like walking skeletons with protruding ribs and collarbones. On each of their chests hung a pitch-black bell. As they ran, the bells rang out like soul-calling chimes. Their bodies were covered in long, blue-gray hair. In their hands, they held bright red, razor-sharp scythes. Even seeing them vaguely through the soul's eyes made him shiver. But the most horrifying part was their faces, dry and withered, with only a single, blood-red eye. Right in the center of their foreheads was a black ghost character, emitting a faint dark miasma. Whenever his spirit guards were swept by this miasma, they froze like blocks of wood, paralyzed as if their souls had been snatched. They stood motionless, waiting for the scythes to slice through them, severing their souls piece by piece until they vanished entirely. By now, Shaman Tuong was certain, the things chasing him were demons, and terrifyingly powerful ones at that. He had read many ancient texts about common ghosts, but never anything this monstrous. Behind him, the agonizing screams of human souls echoed continuously, women, men, old people, children. All were terrified. The cries were despairing and chilling. Now, he only had 3 talismans left. He threw 2, leaving just one. His body was nearly drained of energy. He could no longer run, he could only drag himself forward. Suddenly, a familiar sight appeared before him. Under the bright moonlight, he saw the faint outlines of Ban Luong's roofs in the distance. He was about to escape the terrible forest. Finding the light of life, he dragged his battered body forward. Just a few steps more, and he would be out. He threw his last talisman down and continued crawling. Behind him, the demons were incredibly close. He could feel their footsteps, the rustling, and the fierce wind on his back. Under the moonlight, he looked pathetic, hair disheveled, face pale and purple, clothes tattered and soaked in blood. The wooden box he had clung to was also thrown to the ground. When the last talisman lost its connection, he thought he was dead for sure. Still, he refused to sit and wait for death. He kept crawling forward. Just as he had accepted his inevitable death, the noises behind him suddenly stopped. He turned to look, and his blood ran cold. Standing at the forest's edge were countless blood-red eyes, staring at him with a desire to tear him apart. They raised their gleaming scythes at him. But strangely, they stood still, not advancing even half a step. He didn't understand why, but he didn't care. Using his last ounce of strength, he continued crawling toward the village. As he crawled, a sudden beam of jade-green light shot up from the ancient stone statue guarding the village. The statue's origins were unknown, it had been there since time immemorial. Now heavily weathered, it looked like just a smooth stone, though a human shape could still be made out. Every new year or festival, the villagers would offer sacrifices and perform rituals to the spirit of the statue, praying for good harvests and peace. As he wondered what was happening, a massive roar erupted from deep within the forest behind him. The roar shook the forest, waking all the villagers from their sleep. They sat up in confusion, but when nothing else happened, they calmed down. Hearing the roar, Shaman Tuong felt his soul nearly leave his body. When he looked back, the demons were gone. The green light also faded back into the statue. Witnessing these bizarre events in such a short time left him utterly bewildered. But by now, he was completely exhausted, both physically and mentally. He had no strength left. He lay still on the ground, and his vision blurred until he fainted entirely. By noon the next day, when he opened his eyes, he saw his wife, Ba Swang, sitting by the bed, looking worried. His whole body ached. He tried to call her, but his throat was too dry. Finally, he managed to move a finger to touch her as she dozed off. Startled awake, she was overjoyed to see him conscious, looking as if a massive weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She asked frantically, "Where did you go last night, Shaman Tuong? What happened to make you faint by the forest edge?" He didn't answer. His eyes were wide open, staring at the ceiling, his face still pale with the horror of the previous night's memories. He shivered occasionally, making her even more anxious. Thinking he was sick, she asked, "What's wrong, Shaman? Do you need anything? Just tell me." He looked at her and waved his hand, signaling that he was fine and she didn't need to worry. Seeing this, she felt a bit better. Though he treated her like a slave, she always endured it without complaint. It was the shared fate of all women in Ban Luang. In a way, she was better off than the others, simply because she was his wife. His prestige earned her a little extra respect from the villagers. He stayed in bed until dusk before finally sitting up. She fed him a bowl of thin chicken porridge. After eating, he lay back down, still very weak. A moment later, he looked at her and croaked, "Tell me exactly what happened last night. How did I get back here?" Setting the bowl down, she sat on the edge of the bed. "Last night, a strange noise came from the deep forest, waking everyone up. I was startled by the earth-shaking roar. Thinking something was wrong, the village elders sent people with torches to search the perimeter. But they couldn't find the source. Then, someone accidentally found you fainted by the forest edge. They called for help, and someone ran to tell me. When I got there, you were lying motionless on the ground, clothes torn to shreds, covered in blood. I was terrified. Several men carried you home in a coma. I stayed up all night until you woke. He sighed, feeling a bit of his anxiety lift. She still wanted to ask where he went and what he did, but she knew his temper. If he didn't want to say, asking was useless, or he would just lie. Not just her, but the whole village was curious about what happened to Shaman Tuong. But they only gossiped among themselves. They would never know the truth. It took him nearly a week to fully recover. But even then, he wasn't entirely sure what had happened that night. However, based on his experience and research into the paranormal, he could vaguely guess that he had stumbled into a ghost domain. The ghost world always exists in dark, desolate, and dangerous places, hard for humans to find or enter. If someone accidentally did, they wouldn't make it out alive. He was likely one of the very few lucky ones to escape a ghost's clutches. They rarely left their territory unless someone attacked them, discovered their domain, or they needed human blood to cultivate. Through the female soul's eyes, he had only glimpsed a blood-red sky. He didn't know if it was fire or its natural state. But he was certain the area was vast. He suspected the things that chased him were just lowly guards. The domain surely hid a terrifyingly powerful leader. If that leader had attacked him personally, his soul would have been destroyed. He didn't know if the leader had been arrogant or restricted by some taboo, but he couldn't be sure. Connecting this with the strange light from the ancient statue, he guessed the statue's deity had manifested to save him. He was 90% sure of his theory. But some doubts remained. The villagers had lived here for ages. Had no one ever found the place? He didn't believe no human had ever set foot there, as it was only a half-day's walk away. Unless it only appeared or was accessible at night. No one would dare risk walking deep into the forest at night, so no one knew of its existence. Or, perhaps, everyone who wandered and never returned, leaving it a secret. It was highly possible that he was the only one who knew. Because of this, he was certain the ghosts wouldn't let him go easily. His life wasn't in immediate danger, but a sword hung over his head, ready to fall at any moment. The scariest thing in the world isn't death itself, but the fear of knowing you will die, yet not knowing when or how. The ghosts in the forest surely knew all about him, but he knew nothing about them. He needed to learn more about them while he still had time, hoping to find a sliver of a chance to survive. The next morning, as his health improved, he immediately went to the house of Elder Phuc, the oldest man in Ban Luang, over 90 years old. He had been born and raised here and knew almost everything that happened in the village. His word carried the most weight among the elders. He was practically the village chief. Elder Phuc was surprised to see the shaman visit, as he rarely visited anyone unless it was for business or healing. He welcomed him in, offered him a cup of bitter leaf water, and was about to ask why he came when the shaman spoke first. "I come with a request. It's not a major village matter. I just want to ask about a few unclear things." Elder Phuc smiled. "I thought it was something important. Ask away. If I know, I won't hide it." Shaman Tuong began, "It's about the strange noise from the deep forest a few days ago. Has anything similar ever happened in our village before?" Elder Phuc was surprised. Logically, the elder should be the one asking the shaman this, as the shaman had been the one found half dead at the forest's edge. But Elder Phuc knew that if the shaman didn't want to tell, asking was pointless, or he would just lie. The elder pondered, recalling a distant memory. "Actually, after that night, even without you asking, I remembered a legend passed down from a very, very long time ago. So long that besides me, no one in Ban Luang remembers it." Shaman Tuong listened intently, growing more anxious, knowing the elder held the secrets he desperately needed. Elder Phuc took a sip of water and continued. It happened a long time ago. I only heard it from my own father. Back then, strange noises also came from the deep forest. At first, people were curious and formed a team of strong young men to investigate. They searched for 10 days but found nothing. Strangely, the noises only happened at night. So, one night, they decided to camp in the forest to find the source. But after that night, none of them returned. When morning came, people went looking and found only one corpse near the forest edge. It had been chopped into pieces, horrifying. But worse, its body was completely drained of blood. The internal organs were missing, only blackened skin and bones remained. Hearing this, Elder Fook shuddered, though he hadn't witnessed it. Just imagining it gave him goosebumps. He looked at the shaman, who only frowned slightly, showing no other reaction. The elder silently admired the shaman's composure. The horrors he had likely seen in his life were probably far worse. Seeing the elder pause, the shaman urged, "What happened next?" Elder Fook took a breath and continued. After that, the villagers were terrified. No one dared go out at night. From time to time, the earth-shaking roar would echo from the forest. Finally, the village gathered and decided to erect a stone statue in the village center to pray for divine protection. Sure enough, the roaring stopped. But from then on, no one dared to go deep into the forest alone at night. Because it happened so long ago, everyone forgot about it. If the roar hadn't returned the other night, even I would have forgotten. After the elder finished, both men fell silent. A moment later, the shaman asked, "What do you think it is?" Elder Fook replied, "When I was young, my father said it was a tiger spirit. But as I grew older, I didn't think so. There must be a terrifying, mysterious spiritual force in that deep forest causing all this." He sighed. "I'm old and near death, I don't fear it for myself, only for Ban Luong. But since you know much about the spiritual world, what do you think?" The shaman pondered and replied vaguely, "I can only guess the same as you. I'm just a mortal, I can't know for sure what's in there." Hearing even the great shaman Tuong claim ignorance, Elder Fook shook his head. "I suppose I'll take this question to my grave, never knowing what's in that forest." The shaman then took his leave. On his way home, he analyzed the elder's information. It confirmed his theory that the ghost world only appeared at night. But it wasn't enough to save his life. He knew the ghosts in the forest were watching him. One slip, and he would die horribly. He also knew he couldn't leave the village, or he'd lose the protection of the stone statue. But he didn't want to live in constant fear. He had to save himself. Normal spirits weren't enough to fight them. He needed something stronger. A terrifying thought crossed his mind, the Tian Lin Kai. A talisman of unimaginable power. In the dark magic circle, everyone knew its fearsome reputation. However, it was a forbidden art. Anyone who practiced it would be cursed by the world. Upon death, their soul would be cast into the 9 hells, never to reincarnate. It was forbidden because its power was too great. In the hands of an evil person, it could topple nations and disrupt the realms of gods, ghosts, and humans. Furthermore, the crafting process was brutally inhumane. For centuries, it had been the ultimate forbidden spell. He had never dared to practice it before. But now, he had no choice. It was his only path to survival. After days of deliberation, he made his decision: he would craft the Tian Lin Kai, no matter the cost. But it wasn't something one could just make. If it were easy, it would be everywhere. One moonless, starless night, he walked down a path behind his house, lined with tall pine and acacia trees. It was pitch black, yet he walked as if it were day. He reached a small hidden cabin, faintly lit by an oil lamp, completely surrounded by ancient trees. From above, it was invisible. This was his secret workshop. No one, not even his wife, knew what he did inside. He took out a key, unlocked the heavy copper lock, and entered, carefully locking it behind him. In the outer room, there was only a hammock and a rattan chair. He grabbed the lamp and walked down a narrowing corridor to a locked inner door. Opening it revealed a horrifying, creepy scene. A nauseating, fishy stench hit him. Thick incense smoke mixed with the red lamplight created a surreal, ghostly atmosphere. The walls were covered in yellow talismans, drawn with red, cryptic symbols. From the dark corners came the faint sounds of crying and giggling, adding to the horror. At the deepest end was a large red wooden altar. On it sat a bowl of white rice, and a boiled egg. Beside it were a plate of salt and 3 black copper coins, along with other bizarre tools only he knew how to use. In the center was a copper incense bowl, wrapped in a white cloth resembling a mourning shroud, with a large yellow talisman pasted on it. On either side of the altar stood 2 clay statues of young women in red ancient dresses and red shoes. Their faces were covered by black cloths, with yellow talismans pasted on their foreheads. Looking at them gave the eerie feeling of being watched from beneath the black cloth. Shaman Tuong scanned the room, satisfied that all was well, and approached the altar. He pulled back a red curtain beneath it, revealing a horrifying sight. Underneath were pots of pitch-black plants, about a handspan tall, blooming with blood-red flowers. They emitted a faint dark miasma and that nauseating stench. He smirked and said, very good, my darlings." As if responding, the flowers emitted more miasma and stench. He nodded in delight. He then crouched down and pulled out a hidden drawer, from which he took a pitch-black bronze tripod, covered in ancient engravings. Its lid was sealed with 2 ancient yellow talismans covered in dust. He blew the dust away, revealing cryptic symbols and a red demon face in the center. The talismans emitted a faint dark miasma, as if an evil eye was lurking inside. He caressed the tripod and muttered, "In the end, I have to rely on you." He placed it on the altar, chanted a spell, and used a dagger to slice his thumb, letting his blood drip onto the 2 talismans. Suddenly, the talismans turned into black smoke. A maniacal laugh echoed, and a voice like from hell boomed, "Who dares trespass on the master's seal? You shall die." The smoke formed into 2 demonic faces with red horns and mouths full of razor-sharp teeth, staring at him like Yama judging a sinner. Shaman Tuong froze, sweating profusely, his heart pounding. Remembering something, he raised his bleeding thumb toward the demons. They flew over, their long tongues greedily licking the blood. After a moment, they looked at each other, nodded, and dissolved back into black smoke. He sighed in relief. The talismans were a blood seal placed by his ancestor. According to the ancient mystic spells text, there were 3 types of seals: blood, ghost, and trigram. The blood seal used the caster's own blood, only those of the same bloodline could break it. If an outsider tried, they would be cursed or killed by the guardian spirits, like the 2 demons just now. He knew this, but he still feared that perhaps he wasn't a direct descendant, or that time had fated the bloodline, which would have meant his death. He silently admired his ancestor for subjugating such powerful demons. Ghosts are arrogant and view humans as food. His ancestor must have been a peerless master to tame them. However, even a perfect blood seal couldn't compare to a trigram seal, which used the 5 elements and bagua to create an impenetrable barrier, essentially creating a separate world that merged with nature, making it nearly indestructible and eternal. It could sever the fate of a nation. But creating one required unimaginable sacrifices and a genius-level understanding of the universe. The final type was the ghost seal, where the caster sold their soul to a ghost king in exchange for the king killing anyone who broke the seal. It was a rare, desperate measure. There were also heaven and earth seals, but those were beyond human capability, capable of sealing entire realms. Regaining his composure, he slowly opened the tripod's lid and pulled out a yellowed scroll tied with a red string. As he unrolled it, his eyes lit up and his breathing quickened. It contained ancient text, complex diagrams, and a complete, original formula for crafting the Tian Lin Kai. His ancestor had been a highly skilled Chinese sorcerer who traveled to Vietnam, failed at some grand endeavor, stayed, married, and passed the trade down. The ancestor had obtained the ancient mystic spells book, rumored to be a gift from the legendary Chao Bao. While partial, corrupted copies of the Tian Lin Kai recipe existed in the world, what he held was the pure, original method. If he succeeded, no one on earth could harm him. He laughed maniacally at the thought of becoming immortal. For the next half-month, he locked himself in the room, studying the scroll day and night, translating it into common text on the back to avoid mistakes. After months of meticulous preparation, he was ready. He stopped taking patients, claiming he needed a break after his traumatic night. People eventually stopped coming. When he finally emerged, a thief named Kanan had been caught stealing his chickens. The shaman publicly humiliated him but surprisingly postponed his punishment, asking for 3 days. 2 days later, the shaman met Kanan secretly in the forest. He told the terrified man, "Your life and your family's lives are in my hands. But if you do as I say, you'll be fine." "What do you want?" Kanan asked. "I want your pregnant wife's life in exchange for your family's." Kanan was horrified. "My wife is pregnant." The shaman smiled sinisterly. "That's my business. If you don't want your whole family dead, don't ask questions." Knowing the shaman could easily kill them all, and having an older son to think of, Kanan was forced to agree, weeping at the thought of sacrificing his wife just to steal food for her. The shaman gave him a poison packet, instructing him to make her drink it, wrap her body in a mat that night, and bring her to the secret cabin. He threatened to kill Kanan's entire family if he told anyone. That night, Kanan carried the mat to the cabin. After delivering the woman, the shaman sent him away. The next day, the shaman only gave Kanan a light beating as punishment, confusing the villagers. Kanan's wife then mysteriously vanished. People suspected the shaman but dared not speak. Inside the cabin, a woman was bound hand and foot, gagged, struggling helplessly, her eyes full of terror and hatred. The shaman only smiled sinisterly. On the altar was a basin of clean water, a red cloth, and a sharp bamboo splinter. After chanting, he poured the water over her, soaking her completely. Then, he took the splinter and began to ruthlessly slice open her pregnant belly. Muffled screams of agony echoed as blood flowed across the floor, creating a ghastly scene. The shaman's face showed no fear or hesitation, he cut with cold precision. Due to the pain and blood loss, the woman fainted. Once a large incision was made, he smiled, reached inside, and extracted the fetus. As the bloody, premature baby was cut from the womb, it let out a thin cry. He laughed maniacally and said, "Be good, my darling, don't be afraid." He gently wiped the blood from the baby with a white cloth, then embalmed it using a mixture of lard, beeswax, pine resin, sandalwood powder, and other occult ingredients from the scroll. Ignoring the baby's fading cries, he worked meticulously. After nearly an hour, the baby turned purple and stiffened, dying quietly. He wrapped the tiny corpse carefully in red cloth, pasted a talisman on it, and placed it on the altar. The mother's body was dumped into a dry well behind the house, which he then sealed with black cloth and talismans. Covered in blood and sweat, he went inside to change, but his wife, Ba Swang, saw him and screamed. He roared, "Shut up! If you gossip about this, I'll kill you." Terrified, she agreed. He then ordered her to buy as many live pigs and chickens as possible, refusing to explain why. From then on, he locked himself in the cabin again. He ate and rarely bathed. Every day, he had Ba Swang kill an animal and leave the blood at a distance from the cabin. She didn't know what he was doing, only that he was crafting some powerful spell that required massive amounts of blood. Over the next few months, she bought countless animals, selling the leftover meat to villagers to afford more. People thought she had changed careers to become a butcher. During this time, Ba Swang noticed strange phenomena. At night, she heard a woman crying for her child, and the laughter of a little girl coming from the cabin. One pitch-black night, she heard knocking. She opened the door, but no one was there. A cold wind blew, making her shiver. She closed the door, but the knocking resumed. She opened it again, still no one. Then, she saw a white figure walking toward the cabin. She called out, "Shaman? Is that you?" No answer. The figure walked silently to the well and vanished. Confused, she suddenly heard a loud laugh from inside the cabin, clearly a child's voice, right next to her ear. She froze, her heart pounding. She couldn't believe he had a child in there. Hiding behind a tree, she decided to climb a jackfruit tree to peek through a high window. Sweating with fear, she looked through the crack. As the smoke cleared, she saw a horrifying sight she had never witnessed in her life. Inside, a naked infant, pitch black, was slurping blood from a bowl on the altar. The blood turned thick and black around its mouth. Its eyes were blood red, glaring at the empty bowl, its red tongue licking the edges, unwilling to waste a drop. Dark miasma surrounded it. When it finished, it looked at the shaman, wanting more. He laughed delightfully and said, "My darling, if you are obedient, I will feed you until you are full. Later, I'll give you those flowers for dessert." The baby's face lit up with a sinister, craving expression and let out a chilling laugh. Suddenly, it stopped. Its nose twitched. It slowly turned its head and looked directly at the window where Ba Swang was hiding. Its blood-red eyes locked onto hers. She screamed and fell from the tree. She was bruised and her ankle sprained, but the sheer terror of what she had seen, and the fear of her husband discovering she knew his secret, drove her to crawl away in agony. She had only crawled a few steps when a familiar, terrifying figure appeared before her, Shaman Tuong. His eyes were as vicious as an evil spirit's. Looking into them, her body went limp. She knew her life was about to change forever. Inside the cabin, day by day, the shaman used the animal blood to feed the Tian Lin Kai. He chanted to it constantly to unlock its psychic powers and ensure its obedience. At first, it was just a blurry shadow, but over 3 months, it solidified into a near-physical form. It could move objects with its mind, sense its surroundings, and communicate telepathically. Its knowledge shocked even the arrogant shaman. One day, the village authorities and elders, having discovered his murders, formed search parties. But tipped off by the Tian Lin Kai, the shaman had already packed up and fled into the deep forest. That night, as the villagers searched the village in vain, deep in the forest, the agonizing screams of people the shaman had kidnapped echoed. On an altar in the forest sat a large basin of blood, and a little girl sat before it, thirsting for more. Under the full moon, the shaman chanted. The girl plunged her face into the basin, drinking greedily. "Good, eat up," he whispered. After she finished, her body glowed a terrifying bright red. On her forehead, the character Tien, heaven, glowed faintly, a sign she was nearing completion. She sat down, closed her eyes, and prepared to unlock her final consciousness. Black clouds rolled in, covering the sky. Fierce winds uprooted trees. The cries of terrified ghosts and animals echoed. Deep in the forest, the Ghost King roared. In the village, the villagers sat huddled around the stone statue, trembling as the sky turned blood red and the wind howled like the end of the world. Some fainted. The local authorities fled to the district capital to report the apocalyptic scene, as it was beyond human control. In the forest, before the shaman stood the little girl, but her appearance was now ghastly. Her eyes were sharp as a hawk's, cruel and treacherous. Her silver-white hair hung to the ground. On her forehead, the blood-red character Tien blazed brightly. Looking at it, the shaman felt like an ant before a god, his back dripped with cold sweat. Though he was her master, he now felt like a mere toy before her. He tried to calm himself, noting that red chains still bound her wrists and ankles, and a red talisman glowed on her chest, his seals. But deep down, he wasn't sure they could hold her anymore. However, he knew she wouldn't kill him. He had cast a life-binding curse on her. If she killed him, her soul would be destroyed too. Their lives were one. Unless he lifted the curse, she was his slave. This ancient art ensured a master's safety against powerful spirits, though it limited the spirit's full power. It was a worthy trade-off. He was a cunning old fox, he wouldn't let his own creation kill him. The girl knew his thoughts. She suddenly spoke, "Don't be afraid. You created and fed me. Our lives are one. I won't do something stupid to destroy myself." Though not entirely convinced, he smiled. "Very good. Now that I am a true Tian Lin Kai," he asked, "do you know what is inside that forest?" She smiled. "Even with my consciousness restricted, I can sense it. Inside is imprisoned a Yasha king, a half-god, half-ghost of terrifying power. If he fully merges his ghostly and divine arts, he will become a ghost king, invincible in the ghost realm. But he is bound by a heaven seal, so he can only use a fraction of his power." The shaman had never heard of a Yasha king. He asked if there were other threats. She replied, "I don't know why he is sealed there, but he has been there since before humans existed, perhaps for millions of years. There are many other ghosts, Yikshas, blood drinkers, Asuras, but they are nothing compared to me." Hearing her arrogant confidence, the shaman felt relieved. If she destroyed the threat, he would be unstoppable. He imagined using her to find the elixir of immortality, even if it meant becoming a ghost in human form. He laughed maniacally at the thought of eternal life. She watched him silently, reading his mind. He said, "Help me destroy the ghosts in the forest, and we will conquer the world together." A murderous glint flashed in her eyes. "I am no longer the little spirit I was. You cannot call me child, and you are not fit to be my master. We are equals. I am not your slave, and you are not my master. If you want my help, you must pay a fair price." The shaman frowned. Playing with ghosts is dangerous, he thought. Like keeping a viper in your sleeve. She was highly intelligent, fierce, and treacherous. He would have to be even more careful. He replied, "We share a fate now. My life is threatened by the ghosts. If I die, you die. Helping me helps you. We are in the same boat." She gave a sharp, sly smile. "You truly are a cunning old fox. You've left me no choice. But out of gratitude for feeding me, I will help you this once." He knew she wasn't doing it out of gratitude, ghosts don't feel gratitude. She was just protecting herself. But he laughed boastfully, "Exactly, exactly. And so, into the pitch-black night, a man and a ghost walked deep into the forest. No longer needing the physical fetus, she could now manifest as a near-solid entity, shape-shifting at will, something no ordinary shaman or spirit could do. She appeared as a cute little girl in a red dress embroidered with a phoenix, wearing snowflake-embroidered shoes. But her eyes still held that treacherous, demonic glint, and the Tien character on her forehead emitted a faint, terrifying dark miasma. After 2 hours, they stood before a vast, empty space. The shaman was surprised, the bizarre blood-red trees were gone. There was only faint dark miasma. As he wondered, the Tien character on her forehead shot a beam of red light into the void. The scenery of the blood-red trees and the barrier suddenly reappeared. She explained, "You only stumbled in before because the illusion array happened to be open. A normal human could never reach this place." He finally understood how he had accidentally entered before. She continued, "Inside is too dangerous for a human, you will die. I cannot protect you during the battle. Stay here. I will create a protective barrier around you. Do not step outside it." Without waiting for his reply, she shot a red light at him, forming a small glowing shield. Inside, his heart pounded with an indescribable sense of dread. His intuition, usually flawless, was screaming at him. But all he could do was wait. The battle inside was beyond the human realm. After creating the barrier, she vanished. Due to the barrier's restrictions, he couldn't sense her or know what was happening inside. His anxiety deepened. Sweat poured down his face, his breathing became heavy. Then, the Ghost King's earth-shaking roar and a girl's laughter echoed from the sealed realm. Dark miasma billowed into the sky, turning the clouds blood-red and swallowing the moon. Fierce winds tore through the forest. The villagers watched in horror as the sky turned apocalyptic. Inside the barrier, the shaman was no better than the villagers. He was drenched in sweat, his limbs turning to jelly, his face pale. His mind grew hazy. He bit his lip until it bled to stay conscious. After half an hour, the apocalyptic noises suddenly stopped. Then came a piercing scream from the Tian Lin Kai, as if she had been critically injured. Hearing it, a bad premonition washed over him. The battle was over. If she lost, he was dead. But his worst fear had come true. From inside the seal, the girl in the red dress darted out. Her form was flickering and faint, like she was about to dissipate. The Tian on her forehead was dim. No longer blocked by the seal, he could feel her life force was incredibly weak. Before he could speak, she gasped weakly, "Run. Run. We failed. He is about to break the seal. I underestimated him, he hid his true power to make me arrogant, then struck a critical blow. I almost lost my soul." Her words sounded like a death sentence. Before he could process it, chilling screams, roars, and heavy footsteps erupted from inside, as if thousands of demons were about to charge out. She said, "It's too late to run. There is one last way. Remove all the seals on my body so I can unleash my full power for a final fight. Otherwise, we both die horribly." The shaman hesitated, suspicious. But the demons were already breaking through, cold gusts of wind hit his face. Knowing he had no choice, he pulled out his dagger, sliced his wrist, and chanted, letting his blood drip onto her talismans to break the seals. As the talismans dissolved into black smoke, a terrifying energy exploded from the little girl. The Tian on her forehead blazed brighter than ever, blinding him. Then, she turned to him with a treacherous, evil glare. He shivered, stammering, "What are you doing?" She didn't answer, only laughing maniacally. He began to guess the horrific truth, but didn't want to believe it. Suddenly, a booming voice like thunder echoed from inside the seal. Very good, my dear child. Come to me. Hearing the voice, the shaman collapsed, looking at the girl in shock. She looked at him as if he were already dead. I won't hide it from you anymore, so you can die with your eyes closed. You are just a puny human. In my eyes, you are less than an ant. What right do you have to call yourself my master? You are not even worthy to cooperate with me. Do you know what Tien means in the ghost realm? It means second only to king. I am a Tien Lin, the child of the Ghost King. Yet you foolishly tried to use me to destroy him. Her words struck him like lightning. The very thing he had sacrificed everything to create was the Ghost King's own child. He realized he had been a pawn, a tool of the Ghost King. Everything, from his accidental discovery of the domain to his survival, had been orchestrated by the king. With the king's power, he couldn't have escaped even if he had 100 lives. The king had cornered him into creating the Tien Lin Kai. But it was too late. All around him, demons laughed in triumph. Before him were countless red scythes advancing. The fear he felt was indescribable. He feared death, feared the pain, and feared that after death, his soul would be cast into the 18 hells for eternity. Amidst the demons' gloating laughter, the shaman's agonizing screams and the chilling sound of the scythes tearing into his flesh echoed through the forest. Inside the seal, a mountain-sized demon, red as blood, was chained to colossal copper pillars, the very ancient trees the shaman had seen. On its body were 99 small heads, each bearing the character Tien, identical to the one the shaman had created. It wore a massive, joyous smile. From its basin-like mouth, a thunderous voice echoed, "That makes 99. Just one more, and I will have 100. Then I shall break free from this place, overturn this heavenly order, and establish a new one, the heavenly order of ghosts." Ka ka ka. He then ordered his demons to take the exact, complete formula of the Tien Lin Kai into the human world, to find greedy, ambitious shamans and help him cultivate the final, 100th Tien Lin Kai. The next morning, when authorities and villagers ventured deep into the forest to investigate, they found the corpses of the villagers murdered by the shaman the night before. They also found a final corpse, chopped into mincemeat, a black, bloody pulp. Through the torn scraps of clothing nearby, they identified it as Shaman Tuong. But who had killed him so brutally remained a mystery. Aside from an eerily silent, vast clearing and faint black miasma, they found nothing else. After that horrific night, the event became a spooky legend in Ban Luang for nearly 100 years. Gradually, people forgot about it and stopped believing the tall tales told by the village elders. Over 100 years later, a shaman of unknown origin wandered into Ban Luang, carrying a complete, original text detailing the method to cultivate the Tien Lin Kai. One day, he decided to venture deep into the forest to summon powerful spirits to enhance his magic. By chance, he discovered a secret at the very end of the forest. Curious, he tried to see what it was, but was discovered by the demons inside and chased. Being highly intelligent and lucky, he managed to escape back to Ban Luang. Cornered and desperate, he decided he had to cultivate the Tien Lin Kai to fight the demons. And thus, the horrifying, bizarre legend that had been forgotten by the people of Ban Luang for over a century was reborn once more. The end.